Hey Giants fans, welcome back to Giants Latest. Today we are doing some housekeeping because the Giants made some roster moves, injury designations, injury updates. We're going to talk through all of that. And then I also wanted to include some cut predictions that I think are coming. Now, from what I understand, it looks like they actually made some changes and they do not have to get down to the 53 until August 26th, which means I think there's going to be a lot of movements throughout the roster over the next couple of weeks. But there's a couple predictions of guys that I think are just not going to make it throughout the preseason. So we'll get into that in a minute. But first, let's talk through some of the new signings, the cuts they made, and the injury designation. So they actually brought in some running backs for a workout on Monday. And I know some people are going to say, I think we have enough running backs. And while I agree with you, the Giants do not, because they ended up signing running back Jonathan Ward, and they also signed linebacker KJ Cloyd. So the reason why they brought in running backs is because Rushawn Baker was waived due to injury. And then also the reason why they signed a linebacker is because Ty Summers was placed on IR. Now, I don't think these guys are going to be making the roster. Look, you never know what happens with these guys. Sometimes they come in and there's a UDFA or a random free agent signing that ends up working out for the best. But I don't see it happening, but nonetheless, let's briefly talk about them. So if you're watching preseason this weekend, you can keep an eye on them. Jonathan Ward is 6 foot, 202 pounds. He's been in the NFL for 5 years and played in 47 games. He played for the Cardinals for 2 years from 2020 to 2022. The next year he was with the Titans and then the Steelers, and he also was on the Jets practice squad for a little bit. Last year when he was with the Steelers, he played 4 games for them. Week 8 against the Giants with Russell Wilson under center for the Steelers. So they'll have some sort of connection, although, like I said, I don't really think that Ward is going to come in and beat out Tyrone Tracy, Cam Scatterbo, Devin Singletary, or Turbo. But he has a relationship with Russell Wilson, so I'm sure he will maybe get, a couple snaps with the ones. He played 59 snaps on special teams and 10 on offense last year, and then he was released back in June from the Steelers. So obviously has a lot of experience, doesn't have, amazing stats. His career numbers include 22 carries for 91 yards, 6 receptions for 52 yards, and a touchdown. Went to college at Central Michigan, where he had much more success. In 41 games, he had 2,539 yards, 28 touchdowns. Also was used as a pass catcher, where he caught 98 passes for 909 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, good throughout college, just got to the NFL and obviously has not been a standout. So a little bit about Cloyd. He's 6'2", 228 pounds. He actually signed with the Giants last year, which I thought for a minute that the name sounded familiar, but obviously he was in and out of the Giants. So he signed with the Giants last August and then was released prior to the 53-man roster. He was on the Broncos practice squad last season and was released in May. He was a UDFA out of Miami, and he has not actually played in a regular season in the NFL. So again, these moves are not really that important, but if anyone's interested, I always like to highlight them because sometimes, questions will come about this player or that player, and they end up getting cut during these roster moves where they're making spots for other players. So with that being said, I want to talk through some of my cut predictions, and I'm going to pull up the roster real quick because there are some that I just think are not really going to make it. So with the offensive line, when I did my prediction, I had them keeping 10, and I think anywhere they'll keep 9 to 10, but I think one guy who is getting cut relatively soon is Joshua Ezeudu, and it's about time. Is all I have to say about that. He's been a guard. They forced him into tackle. Not very good at tackle. So anyway, on to the next with him. I think that Jimmy Morrissey and Brian Hudson, 2 offensive linemen, are also going to be cut relatively soon. I think the reality is it's going to be between Aaron Stinney and Austin Schlottman, who will be the backup center, backup guard situation. On top of that, you also have GVR, who is capable of playing center as well, if that becomes a necessity for whatever reason with JMS. TJ Moore is a cornerback who's made, one or two plays throughout camp so far, but I think ultimately Nick Jones is probably going to be the standout. Both him and Art Green, I think, are going to be the standouts throughout preseason. And I'm going to talk about players to watch as the games get closer, but those are definitely two guys for a little sneak peek. D. Williams could also be another option at cornerback. He's done a nice job throughout camp so far, so it wouldn't surprise me if he continues that over the next couple of weeks throughout preseason and ends up being a standout corner that, you never know, makes the practice squad or the roster for this team. Jordan Riley, I think, is going to be another cut that's coming soon between Roy Robertson Harris, Nacho, Jeremiah Ledbetter, Elijah Chapman, Elijah Garcia. I just don't think he stands out well enough between all of those other defensive tackles, and I think it's likely that he's probably going to be the next one who ends up getting cut from that roster. Who else? Let's move through this list here. From an offensive lineman perspective, too, I'm going back to this list for a second. Jason Williams is a guy who hasn't really stood out at camp all that much. I think he's going to be someone that gets cut relatively soon. And same thing with Tomon Fox. I think that he's probably going to be a practice squad guy, but I think ultimately him and Trace Ford are likely not making this roster. It's going to be interesting to see how things progress, but Tomon Fox probably a practice squad, but that's about it. So it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of preseason shapes up. There are a lot of players to watch. There are some good competition battles. Unfortunately, I think that my guy Makari Page, who I was rooting for, I think he's going to be someone who doesn't make it through preseason as well. He just has not done enough to stand out of the other safeties, especially when you've got guys like, Dane Belton, who's doing a great job out here and obviously forcing his way into the ones, which he has done over the last couple years. But, you look at someone like that who's primarily not a starter, and then you look at some of the UDFAs, and, even from the wide receiver perspective, like, there were a lot of wide receivers on this roster who are making a name for themselves, and it's just not the same across a lot of other positions that they had brought in UDFAs for. So I'm excited about preseason because I think there are going to be a lot of players to watch, and like I said, we're going to talk through that at the end of this week. But for now, I want to talk about some injury updates because we have a little bit of a Scattaboo update and a couple other players. So let's talk through that. So here are some of the injury updates from practice yesterday. So here's the deal on Cam Scattaboo is that he does have some sort of hamstring injury, but he did do an MRI and that all came back clear. So I'm not a doctor. I don't know if that means it's a strain or a sprain or a pull or a tear. I mean, I'm assuming it's not a tear because that probably would have come up, but you know what I mean? It's not something severe enough that he's going to be sidelined for a while. So what Dable has said is that he's day-to-day, and the reading between the lines of it being day-to-day means we're probably not going to see him. I would guess, Dable also called it a setback, so my guess is that we probably won't see him for at least another week, meaning that I think if we see him at Jets practice next week, that might be the earliest. I would guess that there even could be a possibility that it could go into the preseason week 3, which is against the Patriots. Now, obviously, they're going to limit him and they're going to be smart with him because he is going to get a lot of reps during the regular season. But at the same time, he's a rookie and you want that playing time and that experience before going into the season. So I'm curious to see what they end up doing, something that I will definitely continue to monitor. But I think it's a really good sign that the MRI came back clear. So it's not anything that is going to hold him out for many weeks or months. So that's a good sign. Jordan Riley and Demetrius Flanagan-Foles were both on the side at practice, but Dable has not specified any type of injury. So whenever guys are on the side, they're dealing with something, but Dable just decides that he doesn't want to give everyone an injury update. And I don't know why he's so weird about it. Like, you look at teams like the Eagles who literally put out a full injury report every day. So I'm like, can you just provide a little bit of clarity? I don't know. Like, we're talking about getting ready for a preseason game in Buffalo where there's like a 95% chance we're not going to see any other starters. So like, I think it's okay for you to put out a questionable diagnosis for Jordan Riley, who's probably not even going to make this roster. Like, the way that he goes about things sometimes is so bizarre to me. I just can't understand it. And look, some people are probably going to be like, Dable doesn't care what the fans and the reporters have to say about injury updates. And I understand that, but also it would just make sense if he did that for all of us. Like, what is the point of you holding out injury designations for the second and third string players? Like, so stupid. Darius Slayton, another guy who was on the side at practice for the last 2 days. No one knows why. No one knows. He's walking around fine. He's taking pictures with kids. I saw him 5 feet away from me. Perfectly fine. Walking, talking. No one knows. No one knows. Just him and Bill Collins on the side, last couple practices, nothing. Okay. I'm going to have to assume that it's not anything serious, which is good because they're not limping or on crutches, but it's just like, what is with all the hush-hush secretness? I don't understand it. This is the thing that frustrates me about Dable sometimes is I feel like he's trying a little too hard to be Belichick with that type of, like with the injury thing and like the talking to the media. It's like, oh, well, Bill Belichick did it, so I can do it. Bill Belichick won a shitload of Super Bowls. When you start winning a lot of Super Bowls, I don't give a shit what you say to the media. You can keep your mouth closed for 10 minutes for all I care. But, get there first, okay? Earn a little respect before whatever. Anyway, Dable frustrates me, clearly. Thomas Fidone, we found out, does have a concussion. So there is a designated injury for him. He's been not at practice, not in team drills, nothing. He left the field, I believe it was on Friday. It was him and Cam Scadaboo who both left. So he's got a concussion. I would expect him to be out at least a full week, which would put us past the game on Saturday. And then we will assumedly get some sort of update about him next week prior to the Jets-Giants joint practices and then that game. Chauncey Golston was on the side. Cordell Flott was on the side. Again, nothing. The thing that's weird to me, too, is that some players have specified injuries and some of them don't. Like, Corey Black, we know, is dealing with some sort of groin injury, but Cordell Flott, nothing. He's just on the side. And the thing that, like, all right, I'm not going to go on a whole tangent about this, but with Cordell Flott specifically, it's a little frustrating to me because we've seen him rotating in a lot with the ones with Tay Banks. So, I would think it would be helpful for people to know what's going on with Cordell Flott because we would like to see him play and see if he's good enough to beat out Tay Banks for the starting quarterback 2 role. Just a thought. Just a thought. Lastly, Elijah Chapman. Also, on the side, no injury, no update. So that's it. We should get an injury report on Friday before the preseason game on Saturday. Actually, it might even be Thursday, because usually it's Friday before the Sunday games during the regular season. So we should get an injury update. We'll have hopefully more clarity on that before the preseason game on Saturday against the Bills, which is going to be interesting. I'm just happy football's back. I cannot wait. And stay tuned because the rest of this week we were going to talk through, the Giants released their unofficial first depth chart. So we'll talk through some highlights through that. We're going to talk about players to watch on offense and players to watch on defense for the upcoming game on Saturday. So hit the subscribe button for more.